Welcome to Universe of Love and Anime, where heartfelt love stories come alive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to spread love and hope. Thank you for joining us now. Let's dive into today's touching story. Growing Heart. Luciana and I fell into the water at the same time, but Javier chose to abandon me and rushed to save Luciana, dragging her to safety while my injured leg left me struggling. Somehow, I managed to drag myself onto the shore, but the moment I caught my breath, I asked him for a divorce. Javier stared at me in disbelief, as if I was being unreasonable. "Lucy can't swim," he explained, his voice full of frustration. "I had to save her. Do you really have to make such a big deal out of this?" Even my 5-year-old son looked at me with indifference, his voice cold as he asked, "Mom, are you okay? Do you really have to be so dramatic?" I slapped Javier across the face and pinched my son's cheek, forcing out a bitter laugh. "Yes, I am that dramatic." The slap made Javier's head snap to the side. He clenched his jaw, struggling to contain his anger. "Virginia, can you calm down?" Santiago, my little boy, started crying, his words slicing through me like a knife. "No wonder Dad saved Aunt Lucy instead of you. You're a bad woman. You deserve to fall into the water." My heart ached, but I refused to show weakness. I dragged my sore leg closer, slapped Santiago lightly on his bottom, and said coldly, "Yes, I'm evil. Why don't you go ask Luciana to be your mother instead?" Luciana immediately pushed me aside and scooped Santiago into her arms, pretending to be heartbroken. Then, making sure only I could see, she shot me a smug, provocative smile. "Virginia, he's just a child." He was upset. "How could you hit him?" she whispered hypocritically. Santiago nestled into her embrace and shouted loudly, "Don't get mad at me. I don't want her to be my mom. She's so dumb she can't ride horses. She doesn't play golf. She's nothing like Aunt Lucy. Dad doesn't want her, and neither do I." Before he could say anything more, Javier cut him off sharply. "Santiago, that's enough." He stepped forward, placing himself between me and them, shielding them like the perfect protector. A crying child, a gentle and loving mother, and a tall, imposing father. They looked like a picture-perfect happy family. Of course, Luciana couldn't resist adding her little performance. "Oh, what a sweet, thoughtful boy. If it were me, I wouldn't punish him so harshly." "You're so cruel, Virginia." I gave her a cold smile, my eyes locked onto hers. "Say one more word, and the next slap will be across your face." Her smile froze instantly. Without another glance at them, I turned and walked away, leaving behind Javier, his lover, and the ungrateful child standing there on the beach. The next day, I handed Javier the divorce papers. He frowned, adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses, and looked at me as if exhausted. "Virginia, if you take this too far, you won't be able to go back." "I'm not making a scene," I replied calmly. "Just sign it. The assets will be divided according to our prenup. As for Santiago, you can have custody." Santiago had inherited Javier's coldness, his cruelty, and his lack of love for me. Instead of forcing him to stay with me, I chose to leave him with his father. Javier placed the papers on the table, his face unreadable, his voice laced with confusion. "Just because of what happened yesterday? Lucy can't swim. Of course I saved her. You were fine. Does that really justify a divorce?" He spoke as if completely innocent, as if my survival meant he had done nothing wrong. "Yesterday, we had taken Santiago to the beach. Javier had briefly stepped away for something, and when he returned, he brought Luciana with him. He claimed he had run into her by chance and didn't want to leave her alone, so he invited her to join us." My face darkened, but Santiago, who usually clung only to me, ran straight into Luciana's arms, excitedly shouting, "Aunt Lucy, it's only been a day, but I missed you so much." That's when it all became clear. Javier and Luciana had been secretly seeing each other, and Javier had even taken Santiago to meet her more than once. When I confronted him with my gaze, Javier tensed up and quickly offered a weak explanation. I only saw Lucy a few times when I picked Sandy up from school. His lies pierced me deeply. Then, as if on cue, a sudden wave rose and swept Luciana and me into the water. There wasn't even a high tide, and the waves weren't strong enough to pull anyone under. It felt like fate was testing Javier's true feelings. In that moment, he made his choice. He forgot I was his wife. He forgot that my injured leg was a consequence of saving his life once before. Without hesitation, he left me to fend for myself and rushed to save Luciana. And now he dares to ask me if this justifies a divorce? Of course it does. Javier and Santiago might not love me, but I refuse to stop loving myself. Looking him straight in the eyes, I spoke slowly and clearly. If something had happened to me, dragging my injured leg, I wouldn't have been able to get out of the water. Javier, I'm only here asking you for a divorce because I survived. Javier opened his mouth but foolishly blurted out, "But it's not like you died." Realizing how horrible that sounded, he quickly cut himself off, looking away awkwardly and sighing. Trying to control the conversation, his words came out like a veiled threat. "Without me, without your son, where could you possibly go?" I smiled and pushed the document toward him. "That's none of your business. Sign it. Consider it repayment for the life I once saved." Javier, proud and arrogant, hated hearing me mention the fact that I had once saved his life, using it now to pressure him. He truly believed I would never leave him, and certainly not our son. He thought I was bluffing, just throwing a tantrum. But when I brought up the debt he owed me, his expression darkened, his brows furrowed, and his face turned ice cold. He repeated his usual line. "Yes, you saved my life, I know. Fine, let's divorce. But let me make one thing clear. Once you leave, don't expect it to be easy to come back." His voice was cold, almost like a final warning. In the end, I got what I wanted, the divorce certificate. And I returned alone to the house where I had lived for 7 years. I packed the few things that truly belonged to me. Though the house was large and filled with expensive items, what was genuinely mine barely took up a corner. I glanced at the elegant, costly objects that decorated the space I had once called home. In the end, I went up to the attic and retrieved my old painting easel, hoisting it onto my back before quietly leaving the mansion. As I reached the garden gate, I looked up and saw Santiago standing on the second-floor balcony. His small face was cold, his lips tightly pursed, and his eyes void of emotion. Deep down, I knew he was waiting, expecting me to do what I always did: approach him, comfort him, hug him, and apologize as if everything were my fault. But this time, I simply stopped, looked at him one last time, and whispered softly, "Eat well, sleep well. Mom won't be with you anymore, so take good care of yourself." Santiago's eyes turned red, but he quickly snorted with contempt and turned away. "If you want to leave, then leave. Aunt Lucy will take care of me. I don't need you." I paused but said nothing. With the glow of the setting sun casting its warm light across my back, I walked away from the house, carrying my easel on my shoulder. Santiago hadn't always been like this. Before Luciana returned, he was a sweet, affectionate boy. When his classmates teased him because his mother couldn't ride horses or play golf like their parents, he would frown and defend me fiercely, saying, "It doesn't matter if she can't. Loving me is enough." But everything changed when Luciana returned and Javier began taking him to see her. The boy who once only had eyes for me began to feel ashamed of my simple background. He no longer wanted me to pick him up from kindergarten. When his friends visited, he asked me to stay hidden until they left. Even on the anniversary of my parents' death, when I sat silently weeping, he coldly accused me of lacking elegance. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much he resembled his father. Javier and Santiago shared the same coldness, the same ability to love and hate with such ease. They both adored Luciana and despised me. Ever since I discovered that Javier never truly loved me, my nights had been restless. I despised betrayal, yet I couldn't bear to leave Santiago. But his growing contempt turned my love into something pathetic, like a cruel joke life was playing on me. The path out of that luxurious neighborhood wasn't long, but it had taken me 7 years to find the courage to walk away under the soft glow of the setting sun. Memories flooded my mind. 15 years ago, my father died, saving Javier's father. The tragedy drove my mother into deep depression, and she passed away not long after. As a child, I ended up under the care of the Nin family. Javier Nin, their only son and privileged heir, was arrogant and entitled, but in those early years, he treated me kindly. I quietly fell in love with him, though I kept my feelings hidden when he met Luciana and fell deeply for her. Even after their relationship ended, I never dared dream of being with him. But everything changed after the accident where I saved his life. Suddenly, it was Javier who pursued me, encouraged by Mr. and Mrs. Nin. He courted me persistently, and I, still carrying the love I had buried for years, couldn't stay indifferent. Eventually, I gave in. We married. We had Santiago. I believed we would grow old together, but Luciana's return shattered every illusion I had carefully built. 3 months ago, I went to pick up Javier after a night of drinking. Just as I reached the door of his private room, I overheard his friends talking. Luciana's back. What are you going to do? Javier, swirling his glass of red wine, let out a bitter laugh. What can I do? I'm already married. But his friends continued to press him. But what if you weren't? You two loved each other so much back then. You almost died for her. Javier sneered. Nonsense. One of his friends chuckled darkly. Oh, right. You couldn't betray your wife after she became crippled saving your life. That debt locked you in. The bitter smile on Javier's face pierced my heart like a knife. I couldn't bring myself to enter. It was then I fully understood had never loved me. His only feelings were guilt and obligation. For 7 years, I had lived trapped in a lie. But now, at least, it wasn't too late to escape. In the soft twilight, I finally reclaimed my freedom. That evening, I checked into a hotel I had booked beforehand. Not long after Mr. and Mrs. Nin called. They still didn't know Javier, and I were divorced. They gently asked when I would bring Santiago over for dinner. Thinking of Mr. Nin's fragile health, I swallowed the truth and simply said I was busy. After hanging up, I messaged Javier. Your parents called, asking about dinner. I avoided the topic this time, but you should tell them soon. It took him a long while to reply. I know. I had already done more than enough. From this moment forward, Javier and I would no longer have anything to do with each other. With a clear mind, I blocked his number completely. That night, I sat in the quiet hotel room, gently running my fingers across the old easel I had brought from the mansion. It reminded me of the dream I once shared with my parents when I was a child. When I grow up, I want to be a great painter, I had said. My parents had stroked my head lovingly and smiled. Yes, our Virginia will be the best of all. But once I married into the Nin family, I had abandoned that dream. Mr. and Mrs. Nin had suggested otherwise, subtly pushing me away from my passion. Virginia, it's better for you to focus on something more practical. Javier studied this too. I was young, naive, dazzled by a life that was never truly mine. I gave up my dream and followed a path I never should have taken. Now, as I cleaned my easel, the old stains remained, though they had faded with time. Still, the easel gleamed once more under my care. I finally smiled, feeling a piece of myself return. I took out the new brushes I had bought that afternoon, placed a fresh sheet of paper on the easel, and gently traced my first strokes, rediscovering the feeling I had once cherished as a child. Just as the tip of my brush touched the paper, the sudden ringing of my phone shattered the peaceful silence. It was a familiar number. Sandra, Javier's assistant. Madam, Mr. Nin is drunk after a business engagement. Sandra's voice trembled as she continued on the phone. He keeps insisting that he wants to see you. I could come pick him up, but he refuses to calm down unless it's you. This was always Javier's way, getting drunk and dragging me into his mess. His assistant had grown accustomed to calling me whenever he drank too much, But things were different now. We were divorced. I placed my brush down carefully on the table, my tone calm but unwavering. I can't. I'm not his wife anymore. Please don't call me about him again. Before Sandra could respond, I heard something shatter on her end of the line. For a moment, I froze but quickly gathered myself. Check Javier's phone. There should be a contact named Luciana. She's much more suitable to take care of him now. I was ready to hang up, but then a deep, furious voice broke through Javier's. Virginia, are you really going to abandon me like this? His indignant tone almost made me laugh. An unfaithful man like him had no right to sound so wounded. Without responding, I simply said goodbye to Sandra and ended the call. I picked up my brush again, letting my swirling emotions bleed into the canvas with each stroke. But my peace didn't last. That night, as I lay in bed, my phone rang unexpectedly. Groggy and annoyed, I answered. Who is it? It's too early to call. It was the housekeeper from the mansion, her voice careful and nervous. Virginia, it's Santiago.
He's sick.
Javier left early, and his phone is off. Could you please come see him? The moment I heard that Santiago was unwell, my heart clenched instinctively. No mother could stay indifferent hearing her child was sick even if that child had already rejected her. After a brief hesitation, I replied anxiously, I'll be right there. When I arrived at his room, I found Santiago lying alone in bed. My heart broke seeing his tiny body curled up, face flushed from fever and his swollen eyes hinting he had cried himself to sleep. I rushed to his side, gently touching his forehead. Sandy, are you feeling very bad? The moment he saw me, his eyes welled up. A trace of sadness flickered across his face, but almost instantly, he pushed my hand away harshly, pulling the blanket over his head. His muffled voice came from beneath the covers. You left already. Why did you come back? You shouldn't have come. He rarely fell ill, and seeing him so fragile made all my carefully built resolve crumble. I sat beside his bed and softly pulled back the blanket, so he could breathe more easily. Looking at his flushed cheeks and tear-swollen eyes, I froze, consumed by guilt. Santiago was only 5. What did he really understand? His attachment to Luciana wasn't truly his choice. It was Javier who had planted that influence. He was still a blank canvas, shaped by those around him. Why had I been so angry at a child? My voice cracked with emotion. Sandy, Mommy's sorry. I shouldn't have left you. I shouldn't have abandoned you. My heart swelled with determination. He was still young. It wasn't too late to make things right. I pulled him gently into my arms and whispered, Come with Mommy. I'll talk to Daddy about custody. I could feel his resistance slowly melt as he nestled into my embrace, just like the affectionate little boy he used to be. He stayed like that for a long while before murmuring, It's no use. You won't get custody. Stroking his hair, I whispered firmly, Mommy will trade the portion of assets she received for custody. Daddy will agree. But Santiago suddenly pushed me away, his red eyes glaring at me with surprising sharpness. With a voice full of cruel clarity, he said, Mom, stop being so naive. With Dad, I have Aunt Lucy, luxury cars, and the best school. With you, you have nothing to give me. Dad will never let you take me. Even if you try, you won't even be able to leave this house. His words struck me like a dagger. My throat tightened, and all I could whisper was, Can Mom talk to Dad? But Santiago interrupted coldly, No, Mom. I won't leave with you. You've never bellow-inged in the Neen family. When Aunt Lucy came back, you should have stepped aside for her. Leave. Don't ever come back. Aunt Lucy will be my mom. Though it wasn't the first time he'd said such words, it pierced my heart as if I laughed bitterly, cutting him off mid-sentence. Javier, tell me something. Why on earth should I accept Luciana? Why should I accept the woman who destroyed my marriage? Javier remained silent for so long that I lost any interest in arguing further. Without another word, I hung up, my eyes drifting to the window, watching the trees blur past under the fading light. In that moment, I suddenly realized I didn't want to be in this city anymore. I clenched the phone tightly in my hand, then turned to the driver. Sir, do you take long-distance trips? I want to go to Sedata, Ciudad de parents' hometown, the place where everything began. A place I hadn't dared return to for years, but now I longed for its familiarity, for my parents' memory, for the simple, warm life I had lost. After returning to the hotel, I submitted my resignation, packed my few belongings, and set off for Sedata. Deep down, I knew I was running away. I was afraid that if I stayed any longer, I might once again surrender for Santiago's sake, trapped endlessly in that suffocating abyss. When I was younger, I had already abandoned my dreams of painting for the illusion of love. For 10 long years, I had not touched a brush. Every time life felt heavy and empty, I would clean my old easel, wondering if I should start again. But each time, work consumed me, and Santiago's voice calling Mom would pull me back into the whirlpool of responsibilities. Now, after the divorce, those chains were broken. It was as though I had been reborn, freed from the prison of my past. Ironically, perhaps I owed this new freedom to Santiago. Had he clung to me just a little more, maybe I would have remained trapped forever. But no, everything had unfolded the way it needed to. With my easel strapped to my back, I headed to Sedata to rediscover the woman I once was. In Sedata, I rented a small house and quietly began my new life. The colors of life were vibrant again, like bold brushstrokes on an untouched canvas, bright, free, and full of possibility. My days were simple yet fulfilling. In the mornings, I took my easel out into nature, and in the evenings, I curled up in my tiny house, reading under the warm light. During my painting excursions, I gradually met a group of kindred spirits. Some were elderly retirees, others were young art students. We never planned our meetings, but we always seemed to gather at the same beautiful places, be the sparkling green lakes, among the golden autumn leaves, beneath the fiery sunsets. At first, I was clumsy with my paintings, nervous whenever someone passed by. Embarrassed, I would instinctively cover my work, terrified of judgment. But little by little, I stopped worrying. Mistakes were natural. The real failure was not having the courage to start again. So even when my strokes faltered, I stood my ground, adjusting the easel, correcting the canvas again and again. One autumn afternoon, as I worked on a lakeside scene, the painting initially looked like a disaster: flat colors, lacking contrast, unbalanced composition. But I kept at it, stroke after stroke, patiently chasing the image I saw in my mind. As the sun dipped below the horizon and my back ached from hours of effort, I finally laid down my brush. Smiling with satisfaction, I gazed at my work. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine and better than anything I had done before. Behind me, a small group had gathered, watching my progress. The elderly and students I often encountered were smiling and chatting. "Hey, I thought you had completely ruined it at first," one chuckled. "But what a surprise, it turned out great." "Yeah, remember how she used to hide her paintings?" I was afraid to even glance her way in case she got shy again. Their laughter warmed me. Surrounded by these kind people, I smiled softly. Yes, it didn't matter if I stumbled at the beginning. My brush wouldn't stop. I could always adjust, correct, and improve, inching closer to the image I dreamed of, even if the process was slow and difficult. My life was exactly like that. As autumn quickly turned to winter, snow began to fall, blanketing the northern city. The cold weather made outdoor painting difficult, so I began spending more time at home, practicing and improving my technique. One day, on a whim, I started live streaming my painting sessions. I never showed my face, only my hands and the canvas, chatting casually with the small audience that slowly began to gather. My streams were simple, filled with my light-hearted mutterings as I painted. This color isn't right. Let's try this one instead. Much better. The contrast here's not bad at all. I'm a genius. Slowly, my channel attracted more followers. A few hundred viewers regularly tuned in, enjoying my soothing monologues and my growing skills. Among them, Two usernames became especially familiar: Shooting Star and Baby. Shooting Star had been one of my earliest viewers. Baby joined about a month later. I remembered them not only because of their generosity, both frequently sent me donations despite my protests, but also because they seemed to know each other and constantly bickered in the chat. Shooting Star was like a stern teacher, praising my work, but also offering blunt critiques. Baby, in contrast, was endlessly sweet, defending me even when I clearly made mistakes. Their heated arguments often made me laugh as I painted. Baby, do you even know how to paint? Stop pretending you're an expert. Shooting Star, at least I'm better than an old man without a diploma. Baby, you talk too much. No wonder you don't have a wife. Shooting Star, aha, your mom left too. Despite their constant sparring, whenever anyone entered the chat to harass me, demand that I reveal my face, or leave rude comments, both of them would immediately band together to defend me. I never intended to profit from my streams. It was just a way to share my journey and keep myself company. But seeing these two fiercely protecting me moved me deeply. One evening, wanting to show my gratitude, I offered to send them each a painting. Smiling, I asked them privately for their addresses so I could mail the gifts. At first, there was no response. The chat fell oddly silent. But just as I was about to end the stream, I finally received their replies, both providing the exact same address. Even more surprising, they lived in the very city I had left behind. I stared at their usernames on the screen as a strange thought crossed my mind. I couldn't help but let out a soft, amused laugh. Could it be? Father and son? One about to remarry, the other celebrating a new high society mother. How absurd, and yet oddly fitting. The next day, with snow falling steadily outside, I wrapped myself warmly and headed to the local market to buy some specialties from the northern city, preparing to send them along with my paintings. I carefully packed the paintings I had promised them and shipped both out together. When I returned home, instead of resting, I turned on the live stream and set up my easel. Sometimes I wondered if Shooting Star ever actually worked. It was always the first to arrive and greet me whenever I started a stream. Baby, on the other hand, seemed like a student, usually appearing in the evenings after his classes. I glanced at the chat and responded to Shooting Star's greeting. The paintings have been sent. Tell Baby when you see him. Then I lowered my head and focused on my painting. That morning, while out for a walk, I had seen a beautiful scene in the snow: a father laughing joyfully, a mother in a red scarf, and a little boy bundled in a thick coat, all holding hands as the snow gently fell around them. They reminded me so much of my parents and me back in the past. The sight stirred something deep inside me, and I knew I had to capture that fleeting image on canvas. I carefully traced the scene, letting the brush glide across the paper with quiet concentration. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. I frowned slightly, setting my brush down before going to open the door. It was my neighbor from next door, flashing a friendly smile. Virginia, I saw you had a package at the post office. It looked heavy, so I brought it over for you. I glanced at the bag of jasmine rice in his hand and remembered I had ordered it a few days ago. Grateful, I thanked him and reached out to take the bag, but he waved me off and insisted. Where do you want it? I'll carry it for you. Embarrassed, I pointed toward the kitchen. Afterward, I offered him a glass of water to thank him and even brought out some fresh fruit I had just bought, gently insisting he accept it. Once he left, I returned to my easel, only to find the chat had exploded with messages from Shooting Star. A man entered your house. Who is he? What does he want? What's your relationship with him? His tone was direct, almost aggressive. When I checked my phone, I found multiple private messages from him too, all filled with pointed questions. The last one read, Virginia, answer me. Who the hell is he? In that moment, it all fell into place. My hand froze as realization dawned. Shooting Star was Javier. And baby had to be Santiago. I didn't respond. Instead, I quietly closed the stream, my mind swirling. What were they planning now? Could it really be that after everything, they had only just begun to see my value? If so, they were complete fools. I stopped streaming for several days after that. Thankfully, I hadn't provided my exact address when I sent the paintings. Even if they tried to search for me, it would take time. But what I never expected was to face them so soon. After days locked indoors, I finally decided to go out for some fresh air. The moment I opened the door, I froze. Standing before me were Javier and Santiago, father and son, both staring at me in silence, one tall and solemn, the other small and stiff, his hand tightly gripped in his father's. I led them inside without a word. Pouring Santiago a glass of warm water, I sat across from Javier, my expression cold and guarded as I watched him scan the room, searching for any trace of another man. Only after confirming no one else was there did his expression relax slightly, his voice softening. "Virginia, it's been a long time. How have you been?" I scoffed, cutting through his false warmth. "Stop pretending. Sandy's about to start his winter break, and you used that as an excuse to bring him here." I turned my gaze to Santiago and asked quietly, "Do you want to stay here?" Santiago sipped his water, face serious, and shook his head. "I don't want to. Dad made me come." My smile turned bitter as I looked back at Javier with mockery. "Don't drag a child into your drama." Javier's expression darkened as he scolded Santiago harshly. "Speak respectfully to your mother." I couldn't stand to see him pretend like this. I interrupted sharply, my smile cold. "Enough with the performance. We're already divorced. You have no reason to be here bothering me. If the child wants to visit, send him with someone else. There's no need for us to see each other again." Javier's lips moved as though searching for words, but then his expression shifted, grim, defeated. "Virginia, I don't understand. I never cheated on you with Luciana. We were just friends. That incident at the lake height was an accident. I swear it won't happen again. From now on, I'll always put you first. Why do you still want a divorce? You used to love me so much you even risked your life to save me and ended up injured. What happened to you?" I exhaled slowly and looked him directly in the eyes. "When you married me, was it truly out of love? If you really loved me, then why, when Luciana and I fell into the water, did you save her first? You abandoned your wife, the woman who once saved your life, and you chose to bring Santiago to see her behind my back. You wanted me to accept her into our lives, Javier. Don't twist the meaning of love, it's disgusting." As Javier's face grew paler, I could no longer hold back all the grief that had been buried inside me for years. "Javier, when I was young, yes, I did love you. But when I risked my life to pull you out of that burning car, I didn't do it because I loved you. I would have done it even for a stranger. But what did you do? You didn't love me, and out of guilt, you pretended that you did. Do you think that makes up for anything? Do you still believe you're the victim in all of this?" My voice cracked slightly, but my anger was steady. "My parents taught me to be a good person. But Javier, do you know what I regret most? It's not saving your life, it's marrying a man who only stayed with me out of pity." Javier stared at me, stunned, his eyes reddening. "That's not true. I love you too. I just realized it too late." I took a deep breath, my voice calm and final. "That no longer concerns me. Don't bother me again." With that, I pointed toward the door, ending the conversation that should have ended years ago. The more Virginia distanced herself, the more I realized how powerless I truly was. Even though I tried to convince myself that she couldn't live without Santiago, the truth hit me harder each time I watched her calmly walk away. The woman who once loved me so deeply had finally broken free. I couldn't control her anymore. After she blocked my number, I resorted to watching her through her live streams. It was the only way I could still feel connected to her world. When she started painting again, I was both surprised and fascinated. I saw the passion in her brushstrokes, the passion I once stole from her. She looked alive again, as if she had reclaimed a piece of herself that had been buried for years. The more I watched, the more I wanted to be part of her life again. So I created the username Shooting Star, while Santiago, perhaps out of his own guilt or complex emotions, created the username Baby. We both silently followed her journey, arguing in the chat, yet always defending her when strangers dared to criticize. But even then, she never suspected who we were. I foolishly thought that by supporting her anonymously, I could find my way back into her life. That hope crumbled the day I saw her neighbor deliver the package. The jealousy consumed me. I couldn't help but question her aggressively, breaking the fragile distance I had kept. But when she abruptly shut down the stream, I knew she had recognized me. After that, I kept searching for her, following every trace she left behind. Eventually, I found her house and brought Santiago with me. I thought maybe Santiago's presence would soften her heart. But Virginia's heart had long closed itself to me. I tried everything, pleading, promising, even bringing back memories of our youth, but none of it worked. She faced me coldly, calmly, completely detached. For years, I returned to the northern city over and over, always with the same speeches, hoping she would waver. Yet each visit ended in failure. Santiago, on the other hand, saw through my manipulation earlier than I expected. Instead of helping me win Virginia back, he humiliated me in front of her with his blunt words. "Dad, if you want a mom for me, marry Aunt Lucy or anyone else. Don't make things harder for Mom." His words cut deeper than any argument Virginia ever had with me. After several humiliations, I stopped bringing Santiago with me. The years passed, and my visits became less frequent. Eventually, I stopped going altogether. But even as time moved forward, my regret only grew heavier. By the 5th year, I could no longer face her. I watched from a distance as Virginia's reputation as a painter flourished. Her talent, which I had once smothered, now made her renowned across the country. She had also moved on, starting a new life with that neighbor, the man who had gently carried her groceries that snowy afternoon. Then came the final blow. Santiago, our son, now 12, visited her before her wedding. He gave her a bouquet of red roses and wished her happiness with a maturity that I never expected. On her wedding day, he stood by her side, dressed in a black suit, walking her down the aisle like a proper gentleman. When he handed her over to the groom, he whispered threatening words to the man, warning him not to hurt her as I had. I heard what he said that day. His voice was filled with fierce protectiveness. "Those who make my mom suffer don't end well. The last one is already in the hospital. Be careful." That man solemnly promised him, "I will love and protect her forever. I swear on my life." Watching that moment from afar, I finally understood. Virginia no longer needed me, and neither did Santiago. The two people I once thought I controlled had freed themselves entirely from my grasp. My belated realization of love had come too late. I once believed I was the victim, trapped by guilt, by fate, by circumstances. But standing there, alone and powerless, I understood that I was never the victim. I was the one who failed them both. Years passed after Luciana's death, but the shadows she left behind had long faded from our lives. My mother finally lived the peaceful and free life she had yearned for through years of silent suffering. The man she married treated her with a gentleness that neither Javier nor anyone from the past had ever shown her. In his eyes, she was never someone to pity or control. She was simply the woman he loved and cherished. Every time I visited them, I saw the genuine happiness that had once seemed so distant and unreachable for her. My mother's smile now carried a softness that I hadn't seen since I was a small child. Her eyes sparkled, not because she had learned to pretend, but because she had finally found a life where she no longer had to hide her pain. The house was filled with her laughter, with the scent of fresh paint and the warmth of quiet evenings spent with family, away from the toxic chains that once held her captive. But behind all this peace was a path paved with sacrifice I made when I was just a child, who understood far too much, far too soon. Back then, I had to act heartless, so she could let go of me without guilt. She loved me so deeply that leaving me was the only chain that kept her trapped with Javier. I knew that if I clung to her, she would never have had the courage to leave. So I pushed her away. I hardened my heart and became cold toward her, even when it tore me apart inside. And now, looking back as a grown man, I understood even more how much that decision had cost both of us. But if I could go back in time, I would still make the same choice for her freedom, for her happiness. After Javier's death, with my grandfather's guidance, I gradually took over the company. The process was painful, but I forced myself to mature quickly. My only goal was to build a world where my mother would never again have to suffer or depend on anyone. And when the time came, I confronted Luciana, the woman who had brought so much pain into my mother's life. She appeared before me, no longer the proud, arrogant woman who had once thought herself superior. Instead, she knelt before me, her tears falling helplessly as she begged for mercy, reminding me of our shared childhood memories, the times when we had played together as children. Santiago, for the sake of the friendship we once had, please let me go. I was young and foolish. I never meant to hurt your mother. But those so-called childhood bonds meant nothing to me now. My voice was cold and emotionless as I answered her. Friendship? You call what you did to my mother friendship? You spent years humiliating her, making her suffer, and stealing what should never have been yours. I showed no hesitation as I pressed forward, targeting her family's company, leaving her with insurmountable debts, until one day, broken and defeated, she chose to end her own life. When news of her suicide reached me, I didn't feel triumph, only emptiness. Revenge did not bring satisfaction. It was never about revenge, for might was always about protecting my mother, even if I had to dirty my own hands to do it. Running the company was exhausting, but every time I saw my mother smiling gently while painting under the soft light in her studio, every time I heard her laughter at family dinners, I reminded myself, this was worth everything. The woman who once sacrificed everything for me now lived in the life she deserved, free from sorrow, free from control, surrounded by love and security. As for me, I had no regrets. The boy who once pretended to be cruel had grown into a man who vowed to keep her safe for the rest of her life. Years passed, but I continued to stay by her side. Every winter, I would still visit her small studio, bringing her favorite tea, watching her create beautiful works that were now celebrated across the country. Art critics praised her resilience and elegance, but few people knew the storm she had weathered to reach this point. Only I knew the depth of her pain, the nights she cried silently, the years she sacrificed herself for my sake. On one autumn afternoon, as the golden leaves fell gently from the trees, my mother and I visited my grandfather's grave together. After we offered incense and prayers, she quietly placed her hand on my arm and smiled. Santiago, your grandfather would be so proud of the man you've become. I held her hand gently, my voice calm but resolute. Mom, I only did what you once did for me. You protected me when I was small. Now it's my turn to protect you. She gazed at me with tears in her eyes, not of sorrow, but of fulfillment. You're no longer the little boy who clung to my skirt, afraid to let me go. You've grown into the kind of man I always hoped you'd be. That evening, as we returned home under the fading light, I watched my stepfather waiting at the door, smiling warmly, already preparing dinner. My mother's laughter rang softly in the air as she walked toward him, her arm wrapped around mine. For the first time in many years, I felt a rare, complete sense of peace. The past, with all its bitterness and regret, had finally been buried. The love my mother gave me in my earliest years had come full circle. She had once carried me through her darkest days, and now I would carry her through the rest of her life in light. Because sometimes, the greatest love is not possession, nor sacrifice that demands something in return. It's the strength to let go, and the courage to rebuild. And now, finally, we were both free. And that's the end of today's story. Life is full of choices, sacrifices, and sometimes painful decisions that shape who we become. Through Virginia's strength, Santiago's silent love, and the twists of fate, we witnessed a journey of healing, redemption, and the power of letting go. If you felt touched by this story, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe to Universe of Love and Anime, and share it with your friends so more people can experience these emotional journeys. Your support means the world to us and allows us to keep bringing you more stories of love, sacrifice, and second chances. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again in the next story.